lesson, Demystifying the Judicial System, but I really changed the title. My curriculum stuff, it says Demystifying the Judicial System, but I changed it into De-Mythifying. Because there's so many myths in our judicial system. I don't know if that's how I want to go first one, but before we do that, just a couple of things to bring up to speed on what was happening. This was our MAGA march last Saturday. How many, was anybody there with us Saturday?
I was there.
I know Penny was
Jen
there.
was there.
Jen was there, all
No,
right?
Jen wasn't there.
All right, huh?
Jen wasn't there.
Oh, Jen wasn't there.
No, it's just,
Okay, all right.
just me and Roseanne was there.
Okay, just to bring it up to speed on what we had, last Saturday, a week from Saturday, we had 440 people showed up to march in support of Trump and the present administration. And there, if you see the Oath Keepers, I'm their chaplain for the Orange County Oath Keepers, so that was me. And if you notice here, there's our flag, the Faith and Freedom flag. You see it? So we were there also. But there was 440 of us that walked across the bridge in support of President Trump and the present administration. And this was the mascot, the Trump. The Trump dog. He had a wig on, a suit and a tie.
Oh, we're supposed to look like Donald.
Yeah, right. Right.
Even has a suit on.
He even had the suit on. Huh? Yeah, he had a suit on, had a tie, had a Trump wig on. It was, it was cool. So that was a good day where we really made a witness going across the bridge for supporting our county. They Don't Tread on Me flag somebody had there as well. So that was good. That was a good thing. What was the next thing that we did was what? Okay, Legislative Day. Jen, you want to tell them a little bit about Legislative Day? What we did?
What did we do? It was really awesome. It was just real encouraging just to see what's going on and what the leadership is doing. And who was it? The guy spoke. The twin brothers.
Benham brothers.
The Benham brothers spoke about their testimony of just standing up in front of, everybody else who's discouraging truth and standing up for truth. And they gave up a show because they stood up for truth. And they just encouraged us to keep, standing up and doing the right thing. And I don't know, it was just really good. It was just encouraging to see that many people there. It was good. It was my second time there, and I was definitely inspired just to keep going on and standing in there and getting informed. Faye and her husband, who else was it who went up? Gordon went up. We went up to Stephanie and John.
Yeah, and John. Yeah, we had 8 people. Yeah, we got 8 people in our
And we
group.
went and we stood up. We held up those signs against suicide.
Suicide assistance.
And the thing that I learned about it was I needed to be more informed, because then somebody pointed out to us and was like, all right, what is that about, And I should have given them that paper regarding suicide, which the bill number was.
Right.
So I learned I just need to be a little bit more informed before I go up there and stand up there and, when I'm asked questions,
Right.
So I just wasn't prepared to give them that, and if I had that paper with me, I would have been like, here you go, because the woman was asking me, well, what number in legislation is that? What is that in reference to?
Right.
And
Right.
that was just something I learned about it.
Good. And then Jen went to visit their legislators.
Yeah, that's when we went up to see the legislators. That's right, we went with you.
Right. And to give them.
What legislator did you meet?
We didn't meet them because they weren't in their office. They were on a break or something.
But
But
staff was there.
their staff was there, so we were able to give them the staff paperwork and stuff and just talk with them, and it was good.
To give them a piece of our mind.
In an honorable way.
Yes.
Because
Jesus'
that's what the
name.
approach should be,
Yeah.
just like anything.
Yeah. That's
That
what
was
it's all
good.
about being a witness.
Mhm.
There's probably about 1,500 people there that day in Albany. It's usually about how many we get out on Legislative Day. To just be a witness to Christ, to let the politicians know that there are Christians in New York.
Yes.
That's the whole thing. And this is,
And also, can I mention this too?
sure,
There was also a petition for personhood for the preborn. A woman had approached us, and her name was Vivian, and you know, that this is a petition that she had us sign and encourage us to get people's signatures to end abortion. You know, so they're gonna present this to legislators, so I got some signatures, and I was gonna ask if anybody else was interested to read it and sign as well,
Yeah, so
you know, to stop abortion, because it's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
it's basically to declare an unborn person alive,
Right.
to declare that they are a human being. I mean, who would have thought that you have to actually pass a law to do that, but that's the whole
And the
thing.
reality is with technology shows that a baby is a baby, period. You know, it's a heartbeat, it's a person.
Right.
You know, save the whales, yeah, right, save the babies.
Well, the good news, President Trump's gonna sign an order that the states are now gonna defund Planned Parenthood.
And they're gonna decide, they'll be able to decide, which
Right.
is
The
good.
states will be able to decide.
Right, right. And like I said, for New York, that's not gonna make a difference, because New York is pro-abortion anyway.
No, stop saying that.
Does
It's gonna
it?
turn over. It's
Okay,
gonna
all right.
turn over.
I stand corrected.
Right.
My
I stand
lifetime, I gotta
corrected.
see it.
Speak life.
Okay, I
Speak
stand
life.
Right,
It's gonna
exactly.
Yeah,
All
since
right.
1973.
All right,
Going
which
on
reminded,
24 years.
so this is just a summary. I came up with the bills that came up Tuesday at Legislative Day. They gave us a position papers on the different bills that are there. If you want to find out, like Jen was saying, to find out more about them, you can go to albanyupdate.com and you can get position papers on each one of the bills that are up. But I just made a quick chart just to show you some of the ones that are important to us that we consider. Like, for example, an equal access bill. That's in, whenever you see S5130, an S number, that means it's a Senate bill. It's in the Senate. That's the number in the state Senate. When you see a bill number with the letter A, that's a bill that's in the Assembly. Now, you remember, the normal procedure has got to go through the Assembly, then the Senate, then the governor signs it for it to be law. So it's got to jump through all those hoops. So this bill is now, it's sponsored in both houses. There's a bill in the Senate and there's a bill in the Assembly. Robach is the sponsor in the Senate, and Simowitz is the sponsor, assemblyman in the Assembly, called Equal Access Bill, gives equal access to higher education to homeschool children. In other words, what's happening now is that what?
That's what they were asking us, what number, you know, that's the number we had to
Also,
refer
yeah.
to for the suicide bill.
Okay, okay.
So
Right.
that's what I was talking about, because she was like, well, what number is it?
Right, what
You know,
number bill
because I
is
was
it?
saying it's against, you know, suicide, and she
Because-
was like, well, what number? So that's what she was asking for.
Because that's how you research it, by the number of the bill,
Okay.
when you go onto the website. The Equal Access Bill, what's happening now is that certain colleges are not recognizing homeschoolers' high school diploma. They're telling them that you have to go out and get a GED. A lot of colleges are telling the homeschoolers, okay, you did your own fun, you gotta go get a GED. And we say, that shouldn't be, because they're getting a better education homeschooled
Yes.
than they're not recognizing. So this Equal Access Bill would recognize homeschoolers' high school education as being equivalent to any type of public school education. And it's trying to tell the status, it's in the Senate committee, that basically means it's in the Senate. There's not a lot of committees in the Senate, it's in the Senate, and we're in support of that bill. So we want you to be in support of that bill. The Assembly bill, see, now this bill is only sponsored in the Assembly, there's no Senate version yet. This is requiring multiple occupancy bathrooms in public schools, state colleges, universities, and state agencies to be single sex. Imagine that, you have to actually pass a law to make sure that a men's room stays just a men's room.
Yay, God.
Right, but that's where things are at. All right, so this is, requires bathrooms to be single sex in schools and state agencies. It's in the Governmental Operations Committee in the Assembly. See, they have a lot of committees. They refer them to a committee before they come out to the, for a whole vote, and we're in support of that bill there as well. Here you have a bill by Golden, a Senate bill. There's no bill in the Assembly, so they need eventually one in the Assembly too. So they have to pass it in both places. By Senator Golden, this guy's Staten Island senator. He's really good on pro-life issues and that. He's a blessing to us. Anyway, this one is a report on tax deduction for adoption of special needs children. Paves the way for deduction for special needs children. Now, to encourage people to adopt kids with special needs, we want to give them a tax deduction to help them out, because it is a special need. It's in the Senate committee, and we're in support of that bill. Next one here is here's a one in the Assembly and the Senate. The Senate bill is by Savino, the Assembly is by Paulin. Medical Aid in Dying Act, legalization of physician-assisted suicide.
It's bizarre.
All
That's
right?
what we had to give them, was
Yeah,
that
that's-
number,
that
because she was like, well, what
supposed
is
to-
it?
Yeah.
Right, right.
And I didn't have the paper.
Now, I never heard of a more oxymoronish title than this one, medical aid in
Yeah.
dying.
They call it mercy killing.
Yeah, I mean, how could you help somebody by helping them to die? You know, but that, they make it sound good, medical aid in dying. It's in the Senate committee, and it's Assembly, and in the Senate, it's in the Senate committee, and in the Assembly, it's in the Health Committee. And we oppose that bill.
Yeah.
So that's what we know, we need to oppose that bill. With that? Okay, next one, in the Senate, 502 by Squadron, his name is, and the Assembly is by Gottfried. Gender Expression Non-Discrimination Act prohibits discrimination based on one's perceived sense of gender. In other words, you can't discriminate somebody. If he says he's a man, you have to let him in the, if he says he feels like a woman today, you have to let him in the woman's room. You can't discriminate against him. All right? In the Senate, in the Senate committee, it passed in the Assembly.
Oh.
All right? So in the Assembly, it passed. It's down in the Senate committee. Of course, we oppose it. All right?
They're being paid off to do this stuff.
Hoyerman.
They don't care.
I know. Next, Hoyerman, the Senate bill and the Assembly bill bans professions from engaging in sexual orientation. This is the bill that got me and Penny involved in the politics thing. This is the bill that caught our attention. It prohibits counseling of minors who desire to overcome homosexual tendencies.
Prohibits counseling of minors who desire.
Yes. Right.
We can't encourage them to
Did
take-
Scartados sponsor that in the
He's one of the
assembly?
sponsors
He's
of
one
it.
of the sponsors, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In other words, if somebody, that doesn't mean he's coerced by his parents.
Right.
It means if he wants counseling of his own free will, and he comes to us for counseling to help him live a good Christian life, and we counsel him in that direction, it'd be a felony.
And it passed in the Assembly.
And it passed in the Assembly.
Oh, is that what we're gonna get involved?
In the Assembly it passed, it's in Senate committee. We oppose it, so it's not law yet. It's law in California. It's the law in California, it's not the law here yet, so we don't want to let it be
Wow,
law.
so it is
As
law.
long as we have a Republican majority in the Senate, chances are we're gonna hold it back. We'll keep it back. But that's questionable. And the last one that I just put on my list here, Reproductive Health Act, expands abortion rights. Now, I just gave a real quick summary. These bills have a lot more involved. You can look up, if you want to look more detailed information, check out the website, Albany Update. You research the bill by the number, and it'll give you a whole lot more information on it. And this one, it passed in the Assembly, and again, it's in the Senate committee, and we oppose it. Yes.
So it has to pass in both in
Both.
order to become law, but it passes Assembly before Senate?
Sometimes, usually it does, but it can go either way.
Okay.
It can be passed in the Assembly
But
first.
both of them have to pass it.
Both of them have to pass it, then it goes to the governor for signature. Right, right. So you usually goes that way. Hi, guys.
How are you?
How you doing? All right, we're just going over some of the latest bills that are up, hot on the ticket. All right? So, like I said, and more of this information, I encourage you to go on albanyupdate.com, find out more information, and you'll get it. Now, by the way, I'm going to have these. I have this chart printed out for you, so you have it. Let's see how we're going to do this here, because these are all in threes. So let me see. Jack, do me a favor, just pass these out. They're all in. There's 3 pages to each set. So
Okay.
just pass them up, except for the. Yeah, I don't think you'll need the last one. So we're good. I made up the notes for today. The last page of it is going to be this chart, so you have that. So you have the stuff in your stuff as well. Okay. All right. Any questions about anything here so far?
Do you organize and type this out yourself?
Yes.
Good. Maybe one suggestion, if you can do it, would put next to the people what party they're on, like D or R.
That's a good
It
idea.
would be nice
Yeah.
to know who's.
Yeah,
who's-
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I should do that. But pretty much, you know, if it's a bad bill, it's probably a Democrat.
Although there are some Democrats on there that are good, are supportive of
Yeah, that's
good
true.
things too. So that's good
true.
too to
That
know,
is good.
right? So-
Absolutely. Absolutely, that is
Yeah.
good stuff. All right, okay, moving right along. See where we going now? Where we going? Okay, remember this? We're all gonna say this together. You ready? Remember in Catholic Church, you used to all say things together? You used to recite that, so let's play like we're in a Catholic church here. Ready? Here we go.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Amen. What did we just read?
Declaration of Independence.
Huh? We read the preamble. It's called the preamble to the Declaration. That's something that the more I'm into this stuff, the more I'm believing every young kid should memorize this. We should memorize that, at least the preamble, you know, not the whole deal. We should memorize. So that's why at every meeting we'll just kind of get Catholic on it. And we'll do that. Amen? Okay. Moving right along. All right. We talk about the three branches of the government, right? The executive, the legislative, and the judicial. So first question I have to ask you guys is, where did our founders get the idea of three branches of government from? Anybody know?
The Bible?
Huh? All right. What? Somebody want to turn to that and tell me what that says? Now understand. Now understand. Our founders were students. They knew about the Romans. They knew about the Greek government, the Greek society. They knew about all the stuff that they did that worked and all the stuff that they did that didn't work. So these guys had all that knowledge. They were rich in that stuff. They had an education on that. Rock, you got that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, the Lord is our king. He will save us.
There you go. The Lord is our judge. That's with the judicial branch, right? The Lord is our lawgiver, legislative branch. And the Lord is our king, the executive branch. Right? So those are the three branches, and that's where our founders got it from. They got it from the Bible. Today we're going to talk about the judicial branch. Okay? All right. Like I said, I changed the title from the curriculum that I'm using, which is the demystification of the judicial branch. I changed it to the demythification, because there's so many myths of the Bible. Actually, you know, before I do that, I forgot. Jen, I forgot to tell them. Did you get to look at this?
Yes, I've been reading
Okay.
it.
Before I do this, we have a new project going on, and I'm going to need some volunteers to help us out with this. I have 220 copies of this book. The title is Well Versed, Biblical Answers to Today's Tough Issues. But the Salt and Light Council sent me 220 copies of this book to distribute to every legislator in Albany. All right, this is a national campaign that they've got going on for every state in the country, and they've asked us to help them with New York State. So I have 220 copies. What we're going to do, Jen is already involved. We're going to go over there one Tuesday. We're going to push these in a cart, and we're physically going to hand them to the legislators there as well. And I'm also going to include in there a letter and a little brochure that an article that I wrote on the God issue. I think you guys read it before. If you're not, I have copies of it there for the God issue. So if you guys want to get involved with helping us distribute these to the legislators, we'll go up there on a Tuesday and we'll just walk up and down the hall, knocking on their office doors, saying, we have a present for you, you know, and then however the Lord leads you to speak with them, you know, go for it. You know, that's the whole idea. So I guess we have, I don't want to forget that that's here. And the other thing, if you pick up the Sentinel today, the New Windsor Sentinel, they printed a letter that I wrote on there about the sanctuary city issue. Let me read this to you real quick, just so it's a short letter, but you can pick it up there. Where is it? I call it Competing Compassions. I said, the city of Newburgh recently joined the ranks of sanctuary cities after hearing testimonies that were clearly intended to pull on the heartstrings of the hearers. Compassion is a good thing. I applaud those who care for others looking for a better way of life. But I also have compassion for the victims of crime committed by illegal immigrants, like the 14-year-old girl in Maryland who was raped by illegal immigrants in her own public school. This is only one of literally thousands of such cases. So this is clearly a case of competing compassions. Who will win our compassion? The immigrant who disregards our laws for his own benefit, or the young girls and victims who cannot be safe because laws which are supposed to protect them are being ignored? Our compassion ought not to drive us to make decisions based on emotions in the moment, but rather should drive us to make rational decisions based on logic and science as well as compassion. A city striving to see renewal must attract people who will contribute to the community. Sanctuary cities become magnets for criminals. For the sake of our legal immigrants and the future of our cities, we must get our compassions in right order.
Amen.
Good article.
They printed it. It was a surprise that they did that. So that came out in today's sentence. So, see, that all we have to do is just be a witness. You know, all we have to do is just, you know, we all have a voice, so we need to be a voice. Okay, going back to the 5 myths that need to be demythified about our judicial system. That's today's whole topic. Myth number 1: all 3 branches of the government are equal. Right? You all heard that? That we have 3 equal branches of government? Not so. We'll talk about that in a minute. Myth number 2: the judiciary is an independent branch of our government. We all think that's true because we've heard it enough. Not so. Myth number 3: the Supreme Court is the authoritative and final word on what is constitutional and what is not. Right? Isn't that what we all taught?
Yeah.
Not true. Okay? 4, judges are appointed for life terms. Right? That's a given. Not true. And 5, the Constitution is what the Supreme Court says it is. Not true.
You got 2 myth 2s on there.
Huh?
It should be 4.
I got 2 and
4 says 2. But
oh, that's wrong. All right. Anyway, I missed 4. All right, well, I messed up on the numbers. All right, you get the idea. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at myth number 1. All 3 branches of government being equal. James Madison, one of the founders of our Constitution, he said this: in Republican government, the legislative authority necessarily predominates. What does that mean? The legislative authority, the legislation, the Congress is the one who is the strongest.
Right.
Alexander Hamilton, the judiciary is beyond comparison the weakest of the 3 departments of power. We need to understand that when they founded the 3 branches of government, their idea was that the people had to be the voice, the strongest voice. What was representative of the people? The Congress. They represented the people. So by design, that had to have the strongest voice. The judiciary system, actually, when they first set it up, their first office was a little closet in the Capitol building. Basically, it was literally just a one-room office. They weren't intended to be a very strong part of the government. They just wanted it to be like a reference group, basically. But this is what our founders taught us. Let me go back. So the point is that they were intended to be the weakest part of government. Now, understand this. Why are they weakest? The Congress has what? The power of what? Anybody can fill in the blank? Congress has the power of the purse. Congress has the power of the purse. Congress can cut off money. They're responsible, so they have power. They have the power of the money, right? Our president has the power of the army. He's the executive branch.
Right.
His job is to get the stuff done. So he's been given the power to make things happen. What does the judicial branch have power over? Nothing. They have no power of the purse. They have no power to order anybody to do anything.
But don't they enforce the law?
No.
They don't,
Huh?
they enforce the laws? Like the judges?
No, who enforces the laws?
Well, the police, but.
The executive branch, right? There's a famous case back, Andrew Jackson, by the way, one of the presidents that Trump identified with was Andrew Jackson, because Andrew Jackson was like a radical, all right? But what he, there was a famous Supreme Court case where a Supreme Court Justice John Marshall, one of the first ones, he passed he made a Supreme Court ruling. I forget the details of it, but it had to do with the removal of Indians in the South. So he made Andrew Jackson did a law to remove them, and John Marshall said it was unconstitutional. So Andrew Jackson's answer to him was, Mr. Marshall made his judgment, now let him enforce it. And I think that's what President Sorry. I think that's what President Trump might end up modeling himself after. If he sees a Supreme Court ruling that he doesn't agree with, he might just say, well, they made the ruling, let them enforce it. We're going to do what we're doing anyway.
Because the executive office has the power to enforce, that he enforces.
Exactly. So you see how we bought into these myths, but when you find out about it, you found a whole different thing. All right. Myth number 2. The judiciary is an independent branch of our government. Right? We all heard that? Right? That it's an independent, it's not political and all that stuff? Now listen to this. Thomas Jefferson. It should be remembered as an axiom of eternal truth in politics that whatever power in any government is independent is absolute also. What he was saying is if they become independent, they become absolute. In other words, let me take it to this next one. What innumerable acts, this is John Dickinson, a signer of the Constitution, he said, what innumerable acts of injustice may be committed and how fatally may the principles of liberty be sapped by a succession of judges utterly independent of the people. Of the people. Right? And then one more by, now, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the only constitution older than our Constitution is the Constitution of Massachusetts. There's no other constitution older than ours, other than that state constitution. And that's where we got a lot of our ideas from. And there it says this, all power residing originally in the people and being derived from them, the several magistrates and officers of government vested with authority, whether legislative, executive, or judicial, are their substitutes and agents and are at all times accountable to them. So see, what they're saying is that the judges cannot be independent. They have to be accountable to what? To the people. Every branch of government, they're saying here, that each one of them is an agent of the people, and they have to be accountable to the people. So the judges cannot do their own thing. They can't be independent. They must be accountable to the people. So when we hear that the judiciary is an independent branch, it's a myth, because it's not. They're accountable. They are dependent upon we, the people. Amen? All right. Moving right along. Myth number 3. The Supreme Court is the authoritative and final word on what is constitutional and what is not. Right? We all heard that one before?
Yeah.
Well, let's see what our founder said here. Thomas Jefferson. The opinion that gives the judges the right to decide what laws are constitutional and what are not only for themselves, but for the legislative and executive, would make the judiciary a despotic branch. All right, so Thomas Jefferson was saying, they don't get to call the shots for everybody else. All right. And again, Jefferson, in a letter that he wrote to a friend, he said, "You seem to consider the judges as the ultimate arbiters of all constitutional questions, a very dangerous doctrine indeed, and one which would place us under the despotism of an oligarchy. Our judges are as honest as other men, and not more so. They have with others the same passions for party, for power, and for privilege of their core. The Constitution has erected no such single tribunal." See, so they are not the final word on what is the Constitution. They're not the authoritative word on the Constitution.
So how did they get there? Because they seem to be today.
Right. How? All that's necessary for evil to triumph is what? For good men to do nothing. Yes.
They get away with it because we allow them to,
Yes.
basically.
Yeah.
Right?
That's it. Well, that's why I love that quote by Edmund Burke. All that's necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And I would say, God forbid, we become those good men who do nothing. That's why you're here, because we're doing something. Amen? All right, moving right along. Myth number 4. We're doing good. We're going to have extra time here. Judges are appointed for life terms, right? You all heard that?
Yeah.
Where do we get the authority for that? How do we know that's true? Where do you think we should go to get the authority for what the judges do? Huh?
The Bible.
In the biblical sense, but what about in a civic sense? The Constitution. Now it's interesting, when you look, I don't know how to figure, but if you look at the Constitution, you have the whole first section is about the legislative branch, it's a gazillion paragraphs, it's a whole lot. Then you have the executive branch, it's a whole lot more. When you go to the judicial branch, it's about one little paragraph. So it tells you, even looking at the Constitution, that they didn't expect the judicial branch to be very impactful. The judges, here's what the Constitution says. The judicial power, it said right out of the Constitution, the judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court, and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior, and shall at stated times receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuing office. Whoops, where did I go?
So what is good behavior?
But in other words,
What determines good behavior?
who determines the good behavior? Who do we say is the final authority in our government?
God.
The Congress.
We the people. Who's our representatives? Congress. Right? So it's whatever the Congress determines is going to be good behavior. So in other words, if Congress says some judge is acting poorly, they have the authority to impeach him.
That's why it's been such a debacle so far, because people have been in authority, and their moral perspectives have tainted it, and where it's been right now. So
Exactly.
we need to get good men and women like yourself, who teach this kind of truth
Exactly.
there.
Exactly. Because my people perish for a lack of knowledge. Right? That's why we're here, because we don't want our children to perish because of our lack of knowledge.
But what makes you have good behavior?
Okay. Well, how about you want to see some examples of a judge? Has any judge ever been impeached before? There's a Supreme Court justice. Anybody think of that? There was one Supreme Court justice that was impeached, but actually here's a list.
Oh, wow.
15 federal judges have been impeached. Of those 15, 8 were convicted by the Senate, 4 were acquitted by the Senate, and 3 resigned before an outcome at trial. Now here, John Pickering, mental instability and intoxication on the bench.
Wow.
That was bad behavior.
1803?
1803,
Wow.
right, okay? 1804, Supreme Court Justice Samuel Chase. Arbitrary and oppressive conduct of trials. So that the Congress just said he was being arbitrary, it wasn't making sense, so they impeached him. They could do that. It wasn't even high crimes and misdemeanors. It was bad behavior. See, the threshold is even lower. He doesn't have to be convicted of a crime. The Congress just have to say he wasn't behaving very well.
Wow.
And they can impeach him, all right? Samuel Chase, oppressive conduct of trials. He was acquitted actually by the Senate, but he was still impeached. James Hawkins Peck, abuse of contempt of power, acquitted by the Senate. West Hughes Humphrey, 1862, refusing to hold court and waging war against the United States government. Now, if you notice, this was 1862. What was happening about then?
Civil War.
Yeah, yeah. So he was siding with the South, basically there. So you can see that. So they impeached him. Mark Delphay, 1873, intoxication on the bench. Resigned from office before trial in the Senate. Okay. Charles Swain, 1904, abuse of contempt of power and other misuses of office. See, that's a very general term, abuse of power. That's really kind of general. Oops.
We're back.
Hey, break, go another break.
Another coffee break.
Oh, yeah. I hit the wrong button. Sorry. All right, there we go. Okay. All right, I hit the wrong button. All right, where were we? Robert Woodrow Archibald, improper business relationships with litigants. This guy was doing business with the people that he was trying. All right. Okay. He was convicted by the Senate and removed from office. All right. 1926, George Washington English, favoritism in the appointment of bankruptcy receivers. He was just being prejudiced. You know, they said that wasn't good behavior. It wasn't being very nice. Halstead Lockwood Ritter, favoritism in the appointment of bankruptcy receivers and practicing law while sitting as a judge. All right, conflict of interest. In 1986, Harry Claiborne, income tax evasion and remaining on the bench following a criminal conviction.
Okay.
All right, Alcee Hastings, perjury and conspiring to solicit a bribe, convicted by the Senate and removed from office.
Wow, that was 88.
That was 1988, yeah. 89, perjury before a federal grand jury. Walter Nixon, convicted by the Senate, removed from office. Samuel Kent, 2009, sexual assault, obstructing and impeding an official proceeding and making false and misleading statements. Resigned from office July 30th on articles of impeachment were dismissed. And then the last one here, 2010, Thomas Porteous, charges accepting bribes and making false statements under penalty of perjury, convicted by the Senate and removed from office.
Wow.
So, does that sound like they're appointed for life?
Does this stuff make the mainstream news?
No.
No.
That's why we have to teach it here. Because you're not going to hear this from NBC and CBS and ABC. That's why we need to teach it here. And that's why we need more people to be learning this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love to be on college campuses teaching this stuff to the young people.
That would be awesome.
Because they're learning a bunch of garbage that isn't true. They're learning a bunch of lies. So you guys can keep in prayer that God will open doors for us so we can start spreading the truth. You know, doing that. All right? All right, so the point is this. We know judges are not appointed for life.
How long are they appointed for until something like this happens?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they are
As long
appointed
as
for
they-
life unless they are out of bad behavior.
Yeah.
Unless Congress decides you're not being a good boy
Yeah.
or girl. Yeah. A good behavior. The whole thing is, whatever Congress determines is good behavior.
So is this one of the branches that they want term limits on? Or,
No, not necessarily, because there aren't any specific term. There is a term limit on here already. Good behavior. That's the term limit. Really. But it's already written into law. People just have to know it. It doesn't make sense to write another law for something we already have a law for. It's just a matter of enforcing the laws that we already have. All right, so that's more the other things, where they have set terms, kind of with 6-year term or 4-year term. That's where we're looking for term limits, because people end up making careers out of politics, and the founders didn't want them to make a career out of it. Their idea was that we would have a citizen government. People who could afford it would go and volunteer to serve their government for 4 years, 6 years, whatever it is, and then go back to their jobs, go back to their careers. It was never intended to be run by professional politicians.
But it is run by professional judges.
Yeah, they wanted judges to be permanent, because judges would be more independent supposedly, and they'd be more knowledgeable of it. But still they're dependent upon the people. They still have to act according to the Constitution. And the people need to know the Constitution to hold them accountable. So if you have a judge who is misbehaving, we need to impeach him. Okay? So the judges on the Ninth Circuit, right now, they're coming out all kinds of crazy rulings. They're ruling about removing under God from the Pledge of Allegiance. They ruled that, I think that's grounds to impeach him.
Amen.
You're betraying the American traditions. But to do that, you need congressmen, actually senators, to do that, because you have to be tried by both, and ultimately by the Senate.
How many judges are there?
To do that. I forget now how many there are. There's hundreds, federal judges. Because you got the different levels of judges. You got federal judges, then you have state judges, all the way down to municipal and town judges. And some towns, they have elected judges for certain terms. A lot of on the local level.
So there are elected judges.
Yeah, there are elected judges on certain terms. Yeah. It depends on the level itself.
And on the federal level, there's federal district court, then there's Court of Appeals, then there's the United States Supreme Court, and none of them are elected, they're all appointed by the President of the United States.
Yeah, have any idea how many there are, roughly?
On the district court level, I think there's 118, and then Court of Appeals would be less than that, and then 9 on the United States Supreme Court. But none of the federal court judges are elected, they're all appointed by the President.
Okay, and then the state?
On the state, it's a whole, each state has their own system, and in New York State, the lowest court is called New York State Supreme Court. Then to appeal from there, you go to the appellate division, and from there you go to the Court of Appeals. But there's a lot of specialty courts in New York State, and a lot of those judges are elected.
Like town justices?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so, and again, each state has its own system.
Exactly.
Because the states are supposed to be solid.
State and local municipalities have their own system.
Yeah, see, it's good having an attorney here. You help us vet stuff.
Bill, is Alcee a man or a woman? Alcee Hastings on it, 1988.
I have no clue. I think it's a man.
Okay.
Yes, anyway, all right, good. But again, that's what we want to know what the truth is. We want to be informed and educated. So you know now that judges are not appointed for life. When you hear that, it's a myth. So we're demythifying it. Amen? All right, and number 5, the Constitution is what the Supreme Court says it is. James Madison. Nothing has yet been offered to invalidate the doctrine that the meaning of the Constitution may as well be ascertained by the legislative as well as by the judiciary authority. James Madison, okay? So they each one have it. Each of the 3 departments has equally the right to decode for itself what is its duty under the Constitution without any regard to what the others may have decided for themselves. Thomas Jefferson. All right, so the Constitution isn't what the judge says. It's all 3 levels have the right to decode it for itself. That's why the Jackson actually said about John Marshall, who was able to say, the Supreme Judge, he made his judgment, now let him enforce it. Because he had just as much right to interpret the Constitution as the judge did. All right? They each one have their own rights to interpret the Constitution according to their own stuff. Now, it can get crazy if they're all doing different things. That's where the confusion comes in. But we need to recognize that our system is based on the idea that men are innately sinful, and we need a system of checks and balances. We need to check them against each other. We need the Congress to check against the executive branch, we need the executive branch to check against the judicial branch. But the most powerful of those three branches has to be the legislative branch, because that's the one that's represented by our congressmen and our senators, by we the people. That's basically our agents. Those are our proxies in Washington, D.C. So that's why that's supposed to be the strongest branch. All right. Now, here's an interesting idea. I call it the devolution of our judicial system. Now, this is going to be an interesting concept and something a little bit general that I picked up from Dave Barton when I was down there with him. He said basically this. He says that through the 1800s, up until the late 1800s, you can call them, there were courts of justice. The idea, the goal, was to find justice. Whatever was just in the court, that was basically what our whole system was founded upon. And to do that, the trial by jury is the democratic branch of judiciary power, more necessary than representative in the legislature. Government where there is no trial by jury has an unlimited command over every man who has anything to lose. John Francis Mercer, framer of the Constitution. And James Wilson was one of the founders of our whole judicial system. He said, one thing, however, must not escape our attention. Jurors possess the power of determining legal questions. All right? So in other words, our initial court system was set up where the jury was the power. They were the most powerful. Why? Because they could determine justice. Because our whole system was designed to find justice in a particular case. All right? Let's take a particular case like, I don't know, let's use an Old Testament case like Daniel. Remember about Daniel? When Daniel was not to pray, and he prayed anyway, and then the king, he came an edict, and he threw him in the furnace. Well, let's say Daniel went to court for this particular case. The jury had then the right to say, yeah, Daniel did violate the law, but the king's law is unjust because everyone ought to have the right to pray. So therefore, Daniel is not guilty. See, so it was up to the jury to determine justice, even in the face of an unjust law. Back then, we didn't have courts of appeal because the idea was that the jury had the final word. And whatever, they were we the people. They were the final determinators of that. So that up until the late 1800s, our system was based on, and again, I'm generalizing, on being a courts of justice. Now what happened after that, it was a case in 1890 something that changed things. And now they became courts of law. Courts of law meant now the jury's job was just to determine whether or not what the person did, whether or not he broke the law. The judge was the one who was going to determine the law. The jury's job was just to see if he broke the law. So now it wasn't so much justice, it was the law. All right? So now if Daniel was up in trial, now the jury would now have to say in 1900s, they would say, yeah, we still think it's an unjust law and Daniel really should have been able to pray, but the law is the law. He's guilty. All right? So now the jury, what happened? Now the jury lost its power. Okay? And now the judge, in a sense, gained a whole lot of power in determining what the law was and telling the jury what the law is and how he interpreted it, right? So what happened there? But now, look what happens after that. Now we go to today's courts. Now, we went from courts of justice to courts of law. Today, it's just a court. And what's the goal of today's court? To settle disputes. If you notice, what happens? They end up with agreement, the prosecution and the defense attorney, right? They go into a room and they come out with a plea bargain. They come out with an agreement. How many times somebody admits to a lesser offense to get off with something? Now, first of all, what does that have to do with truth? or justice, or even the law.
That's grace. It's big time grace.
Huh?
I think it's big time grace.
It's big
Time grace.
time grace. It is time grace, but the thing is this, it's a settlement between two people. Yes.
Well, I recently watched a documentary called 13th, about the 13th Amendment and the mass incarceration of our America's black men. And the problem is when typically a young black man is accused of a crime, he's brought in the back room, and let's say in a scenario truthfully is innocent, but the prosecution says, listen, you can admit guilt to blankety blank charge, or, and then you can only serve 18 months, or you can go to trial and you'll probably serve 30 years. And there is no justice.
Right.
So, and now the trial by jury, that's not happening because the plea bargaining is so powerful and intimidating, and now we have our jails are overcrowded, and we have mass incarceration going on in our country. If you look at the statistics even from the 70s to today, we have millions of people incarcerated.
Yeah, I think we're the highest nation that has the highest percentage of incarcerated people of all the developed countries. You know, but the thing is exactly what you're saying. No more is it about justice. No more is it about the law. Now it's just about finding an agreement, something everybody could agree with.
You could go online and look at the documentary. It's called The 13th Amendment.
The 13th Amendment?
Mass incarceration of America.
Okay. The 13th Amendment, mass incarceration of America. Look it up, all right?
So it's not even about the truth either. because
No.
Exactly.
If they're innocent, they still,
Exactly.
or if they're guilty,
Yeah.
they could get away with it, either way.
And corporations make a lot of money by incarcerating people,
Yeah.
whether they're guilty or innocent.
Yeah. Truth is out the window. All right? Justice is out the window. So that's what we need to understand. This is the devolution of our legal system.
So where's trial by jury? I mean, that whole, like, the courts of justice, the right to trial by jury is fundamental to our country.
Exactly.
And that has been completely watered down.
Right. Exactly. That's why we need to understand that the powerful part of our whole judicial system should be the jury.
Right.
Because the jury should be the one to determine where the justice is. That, but we need to understand what's happening. We look at our court system, we just kind of take it for granted that that's the way it's always been, right? We don't realize what happened over the years. Over the years. Why? I think it's because of the next slide I think I have here. The danger of incrementalism. This is basically what's happened. All right. In public policy, incrementalism refers to the method of change by which many small policy changes are enacted over time in order to create a larger broad-based policy change. So you see, our legal system, that didn't happen overnight. That happened since the 1800s. It slowly devolved, little by little, incrementally. It kind of kept changing that way. It has long, Thomas Jefferson, it has long been my opinion that the germ of dissolution of our federal government is in the constitution of the federal judiciary, working like gravity by night and by day, gaining a little today and a little tomorrow, and advancing its noiseless step like a thief over the field of jurisdiction until all shall be usurped. Isn't that exactly what's happened? All right. This Thomas Jefferson, he was a pretty smart dude.
Did a lot of writing.
Huh? Yeah, he did. Thank God.
Good writer.
Thank God he did. You know, some of our founders weren't writers, so we lost a lot of the stuff that they had. They ended up with other people writing what they said. But Thomas Jefferson was a writer. Thank God for that. The Constitution, on this hypothesis, is a mere thing of wax in the hands of the judiciary, which they twist and shape into any form they please. Thomas Jefferson. All right. Now, that's what he talks about. We talk about the living Constitution. With a living Constitution, whatever you think it wants to be. It's living, it's alive, it's always changing. Well, if you decide today that the Jewish people are just a bunch of rags, they're not Jewish, they're not real people, you can exterminate them without any problem. That's what Hitler did. All right. What happened is the Constitution can't change. The principles of the Constitution can't change. Now, our founders provided a way to make changes to the Constitution by amendment. That's the way it's designed to be changed, but not just by you interpreting it however you want. And that's what's going on with our judges today. They're interpreting the Constitution for it to mean whatever they want it to mean. All right? Okay. So, dangerous incrementalism. All right. Okay. All right, that's it. Okay. Let's take a real quick look at our question and answer sheet here, what we have there. Let's just review what we did think, because we went over this real quickly. It was good. All right. Somebody give me the answer to question number 1. From where did our founders get their judiciary system?
Isaiah 33:22.
All right, you got that one. Okay. Our judicial branch of government is one of 3 co-equal branches. True or false?
False.
Okay. The peace and prosperity of a nation has nothing to do with the judges in office. True or false? The peace and prosperity of a nation has nothing to do with judges in office. See, we didn't cover that one, so let's see what the opinions are. All right, somebody take a look at Proverbs 29:2. Tell me what
Proverbs what?
Proverbs 29:2.
Yeah. I have my driveway, find it quicker.
I got it.
All right, go for it, Rob.
Faster than the computer.
Well, I'm just not fast on the computer either.
When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice.
Yeah.
But when the wicked man rules, the people groan.
Okay.
False.
So what does that tell us? The peace and prosperity of a nation has nothing to do with the judges in office?
No, it has everything to do with it.
False. But you're just saying that the judges shouldn't have that much power. So that's what's confusing about that question, because if the judiciary is run the way it's supposed to, then it wouldn't matter, right?
Right.
If it's based on
right.
godly principles,
Right.
but if it's run by a
Right.
man, but
Yeah.
it's free
So the
government
answer is
by
false.
man.
The answer is false.
Yeah,
the
but
Roman Empire.
here's an example. Seatbelts. Okay? In our country, now probably 90% of people wear their seatbelts. Before New York State passed a seatbelt law, it's probably 20% of people. So the point is this, that the judges still have power. Now that's laws, maybe that's a bad example because that's really laws that were passed by the state government. But I guess the question is people in authority, whether it's legislators, whether it's governors. The point is if the righteous people are in there, things are going to go well.
Right.
But if you got corrupt people in those positions, everybody pays. It just comes right down the line. Everybody pays. So maybe in a sense you're right because it's whoever's in authority.
Maybe the word judges threw me off because I thought you were talking about
Right.
just the judiciary.
That's specific, yeah, because really in a way they really should have no power in that sense. Yeah, all right, good.
I think that question, if it would be stated as true peace and prosperity, because people think they're prosperous, but if they don't know the truth of God's ways, they're not really.
You're right. Yeah.
You know, so if that's based on
Mhm.
God's truth, not America's truth,
Right.
because look where America's truth has gotten us.
Exactly. Yeah.
With the wrong people who don't have
Right.
understanding of truth.
Well, they have their own idea of truth.
Yeah.
You know, it can mean whatever they want it to mean. Okay. 4. According to the Bible, the job of the judge is to A, judge whether people's actions are good or evil. B, judge exactly how God's laws should be interpreted for the people. C, judge according to the laws of God. Or D, judge to settle disputes among contending parties. Okay. Somebody turn to 2 Chronicles 19:6.
Proverbs reference?
Proverbs was 29:2.
Thank you.
2 Chronicles 19:6.
Then he said to the judges, consider what you are doing, for you do not judge for man, but for the Lord, who is with you in the matter of judgment.
And verse 7.
And now may the terror of the Lord be on you. Watch what you do, for there is no justice or partiality or taking bribes with the Lord our God.
All right. So the job of the judge is to do what then?
According to the laws of God.
There you go. There you go. The job of the judge is to judge according to the laws of God. 5. Over the past 100 years, the nature of our judicial system has transitioned through 3 different stages. Name and describe each. Up until the 1800s was what?
Courts of justice.
And what was that about?
The jury would determine justice?
Yeah, exactly. Juries were the final word, okay? Up until the mid-1900s, what were they? What was that about?
The jury determined if the law was broke.
Right, exactly, okay?
So they became triers of fact instead of triers of justice.
Right.
Mhm.
Because all they, in your Daniel scenario, all they do is, did Daniel pray or not?
Right,
Fact.
exactly.
This witness said he did, that witness said he didn't, now you decide, jury, did he pray or not?
Right,
That's all we wanna know from you.
Right,
And
ex-
then the judge
right,
will tell you whether that's legal or not.
exactly,
And he will then give the sentence.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, your job is just to determine if he broke the law.
Right.
Guilty or innocent
Determine right.
of
Yeah,
praying
yeah.
is all that the jury instructions would be in that case.
Yeah, good, great. Okay.
So got away from justice.
Right. And C, currently, what are they?
Just courts.
What's that all about?
Dispute, selling dispute.
Just settling a dispute, finding an agreement,
Settlement.
coming to agreement. That's all. So you see it's devolved. To ensure that, 6, to ensure that federal judges are not influenced by political pressure, their appointment is a lifetime appointment. True or false? Absolutely false, right? We talked about that. Good behavior, the thing. Judges are accountable to A, no one, they're free and independent branch of government. B, the President of the United States. C, to the people. D, to the Constitution and God as they understand them.
Say for the people.
Right.
Should they?
To the people. Right. They're accountable to the people. 8, according to the U.S. Constitution, a Supreme Court justice may be removed for A, using foul language in the court, B, being seen to be drunk in public, C, disagreeing with the Congress, or D, all of the above. Yeah, all of the above. The primary function, question 9, the primary function of the courts is to be the primary authoritative body when it comes to interpreting the Constitution. True or false? Who said what? Right, you're right. False it is. 10. Who has the ultimate authority to interpret the U.S. Constitution? The U.S. Supreme Court, the U.S. Congress, the U.S. Senate, the President, or all of the above? Who's that?
Congress.
All of the above. All of the above. They each get a bite at the apple.
So who has the ultimate authority? That means that
No one. No one has the ultimate authority. That's why they have to find agreement. That's what keeps them in check. If somebody had ultimate authority, that would make them an absolute power. And that's what our founders were trying to avoid.
That would give us an oligarchy, right?
Exactly. There'll be an oligarchy where a few couple old men, have absolute power. And that's what they tried to avoid. Always wanted to keep them in check with somebody else. So that's why they all have the equal power to interpret the Constitution as they see fit. 11. The most important feature of our judicial system is A, educated judges and lawyers. B, allegiance to the Constitution. C, trial by jury. Or D, the process of appeal.
See, trial by jury, trial by jury.
I think it's allegiance to
I
Constitution.
think that it goes so too at first.
Trial by jury. Right. That's the most important one. Like I say, before the late 1800s, they didn't even have courts of appeal, because the jury was the final answer. They were the appeal. They were the ultimate appeal in that sense, the way we have it now. But now they were the power. They're not the power anymore. Right. Where were we? 12. The U.S. Constitution authorizes the Supreme Court to A, cancel laws it deems unconstitutional, B, provide an opinion as to the constitutionality of a law, C, modify legislation to make it constitutionally compliant, or D, send unconstitutional legislation back to the Congress to be rewritten.
B.
What was that?
B.
All right, anybody else? Anything different? He said B. Do I hear a C? Do I hear a D? All right, absolutely right, Rob. It's B. To provide an opinion. Now understand this. That's the only power they have. They can only render an opinion. That's not even an authoritative declaration. That's only an opinion. Okay? That's why Jackson can say that John Marshall gave his opinion, now let him enforce it. Can't. All they could do is give an opinion. And look how much power we've given them. Amen? 13. It is the duty of the Supreme Court justices to rule on current legislation's constitutionality by considering the original intent of the Constitution, B, by evaluating whether or not and exactly how the Constitution may or may not apply to the legislation in question, C, by evaluating the legislation in light of modern values, or D, by recognizing the Supreme Court has the final word on what is constitutional. What do you think? Robbie got it again. A, by considering the original intent of the Constitution. Okay? That's what we want. Judges who understand what the founders meant and the people who wrote the law intended when they wrote that law. That's what we want. Because that takes us down to the next question. For the judge who interprets the Constitution according to the intent of the founders is A, a constitutionalist, B, a modernist, C, an originalist, or D, a traditionalist. Attorney, you want to give us the right answer? Huh? C. He's an originalist. The original intent of the Constitution. Now that's going to be important now. When you hear these hearings for Supreme Court justices, and you hear them saying, is he an originalist? That's what you want to hear. That's what you want to hear.
Or they might use the word strict constructionist.
Or strict constructionist. That means he's strictly according to the construction of the Constitution. Right. What you don't want to hear, you don't want to hear he's a modernist. Right? Because that means he believes, and you've heard this from Pelosi talked about those who believe in a living Constitution. That sounds good, right? A living Constitution. But you know what that means?
It changes and grows.
It means it's not an originalist.
Exactly. It'll mean what Thomas Jefferson says. It'll be wax in the hands of the people. They shape it however they want it to be. That's not what we want. That's not what we want. We want originalists.
Here it goes, the next question, the living Constitution.
There you go. The living Constitution means that A, the Constitution impacts the practical lives of everyday Americans. B, the meaning of the Constitution is constantly evolving with the progress of society. C, it is not a dead document unable to be changed. Or D, our legislative process allows it to remain pertinent through the ages. What's the answer? B, absolutely. Living Constitution means that it's constantly evolving with the progress of society. And even the word progress is debatable. I think it's degress. Degressive.
Aren't you progressive though?
Huh?
Aren't you progressive though?
Am I progressive? I'm progressive in the things of the kingdom. I'm progressing on with Jesus. But this world's idea of progression is really degression. They're going back to anarchy. They're going back to lawlessness. They're going back. I've often said they won't be happy until we're the United Sodomite States of America.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
And they think that's progressive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They call it, all I had
that
to,
is true.
yeah, just look, hey, we've been there before. And this world has been there before. There's nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
Clash of
right.
vigorous people.
Huh?
It's the clash. We're watching the clash.
Yeah, the clash, absolutely, absolutely. So we need to understand what real progressivism is. It's called holiness,
Right.
Yes.
growing toward holiness. That's real progressivism. All right. And the last one here, judges should always work to advance the political policies established by the president that appointed them to office. True or false?
False.
False, absolutely false. Okay, good. All right, and in your packet, I also included there the scripture verses that we've talked about. They're always there, and some of the quotes from our founders that I had because you guys reprimanded me the first time because we talked about these, but we didn't have them in our notes. So now you have them in your notes there. And I also included there a little article on incrementalism there. But I want to kind of read this before we. I want to read something out of Dave Barton's Founder's Bible. If you guys ever want to know a good Bible, this is probably where I get most of my stuff from. It's the Bible. It's Dave Barton, the Founder's Bible. And he's got everything in here, exactly how the scriptures formed this whole country. And it's really a worthwhile investment, believe me. But I want to read something here that he said. This is really important. He said, the clear principle to note is the righteousness of a land is directly affected by its judges, and the revealed promise is that Zion will be redeemed with a return to justice. Looking at the present state of decline in our own nation, we would do well to understand the wisdom of God's proposition as he invites Isaiah to approach the heavenly bench. Come now, let us reason together. Though your sins are as scarlet, they will be as white as snow. Though they are red as crimson, they shall be like wool. If you consent and obey, you will eat the best of the land. But if you refuse and rebel, you will be devoured by the sword. Our founding fathers understood the potential power of judges and the great and lasting consequences that could occur through an improper use of judicial power. In fact, of the 27 grievances in the Declaration of Independence listing why America separated from Great Britain, 4 addressed the abuse of British judicial power. Taxation without representation was mentioned only once. Knowing the potential power of judges to do damage with prudent foresight, the Founding Fathers placed numerous restraints upon the judiciary within the Constitution, resulting in 4 fundamental principles meant to guide them. I think we talked about, actually we talked about five myths. For example, abortion on demand was not instituted by legislators, but rather by judges who decreed it to be national policy. In fact, the Supreme Court had to strike down anti-abortion laws in 46 states to achieve its will. Similarly, the movement for same-sex marriage was initiated by judicial decisions, demanding that state legislatures set aside 4 centuries of American laws defining marriage as a union of a man and a woman. Likewise, prohibitions on prayer before school, athletic events, and graduations and exclusions of the 10 Commandments or other religious acknowledgments in classrooms are the result not of legislators but of judges. This truly affirms what God said in Isaiah 126, righteousness exalts a land, is directly affected by the judges. If we're going to find our way back, we need to lay hold of God's remedy for restoration and seek to return to the kind of judges we had at first. The founders established our constitutional precepts that Americans must regain if we are to see the unrighteousness imposed on America through the judiciary reversed. As we approach the bench, come, let us reason together. So that's what he was saying, that we've let the judges go too far into taking too much power that they don't have. Abortion, gay marriage, all these things that should have been laws by the people, we allowed judges to set the direction.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just wanted to recommend that everybody read the United States Supreme Court decision, Oberfell versus Hodges. It's 2015, probably the worst case that the United States Supreme Court ever decided. And just one excerpt here, and I pulled it up on my phone, that says, far from seeking to devalue marriage, the petitioners seek it for themselves because their respect and need for its privileges and responsibilities and their immutable nature dictates that same-sex marriage is their only real path to this profound commitment. We have in 2015 the United States Supreme Court ruling that a homosexual person has an immutable nature. They cannot change. They are born homosexual. This is Justice Kennedy needing to answer to God for deciding this. But this was Justice Scalia was still alive, and he has a wonderful dissenting opinion. You can go online and you can read the United States Supreme Court decision, Oberfell, Oberfell versus Hodges.
Right.
And another great resource is The Nine by Jeffrey Toobin. It's a great history, and it reads like a novel that you can't put down.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Toobin is a great writer. It's called The Nine. It's the history of the United States Supreme Court.
Okay.
So those are two recommended readings I would just encourage people to, if they want to further their knowledge about the United States Supreme Court and what's really going on today.
Good. Great. Good. I appreciate you having you here. You have that expertise that you don't have. But that's great. But that's the whole thing. We let the courts have, they talk about they have an immutable character. But now, again, but I get into the whole big thing there. But what happens when they decide they want to transgender? Now all of a sudden it's mutable? Go figure.
Right.
It doesn't even make logical sense. It doesn't,
Well, Scalia's dissent is something that we would enjoy reading.
Yeah, because it's more in the Christian view. So.
Yeah, Scalia says, who do we think we are? He really, I even wonder if that whole thing just gave him a heart attack and now he's passed away. I don't know.
Yeah, he's with Jesus, hopefully, that's, all right, good. So, all right, okay, did we miss anything else? I think that was it. Was there anything else in your packet there?
If anybody wanted to sign this petition, which is personhood for the preborn, it's to end abortion.
Okay, good. And don't forget, we got the offering, the bucket is over there. You want to put an offering, you could do that.
I always forget.
Yes.
Check for people to.
Faith and Freedom Coalition. Yeah. A minimum of 1,000.
No problem.
So, all right, well, let's close with a word of prayer, because I realized that when we started setting these meetings, we said it's going to be a time of study and a time of prayer for our nation. So we do want to pray for our nation. So what I'll do, I'll just open us up with prayer, and then as you feel led to pray, pray for our nation, for our leaders, and for our judges, and whatever else the Lord leads you to pray. Okay? Father God, we do thank you, Lord, for tonight. We thank you, Father, for your word. We thank you, God, for truth. The truth has a name. It's Jesus. And Lord, we thank you that we can gather and we can just be edified and instructed so that, Father, we can be good stewards of this faith and this liberty that you've granted to us. Father, I just hear, Father, ask that, and we just hear the prayers of the saints, Lord. We just lift up to you the needs of our country with hearts of thanksgiving and anticipation for the revival that we've yet to see. Just pray as the Spirit leads you. Hallelujah.